Have you ever figured out what it was for your parents that you think created that disparity in their relationship with money? Have you ever probed that? Have you ever understood that?
Well,
because it comes from somewhere, right?
Yeah, I think it's a cultural thing. You know, I think across the Indian culture, my parents are from a state in India called Punjab.
Yeah.
Culturally, you know, money is just one of those things, like even in my culture, my religion, like there's this concept called kirat karo, which means earn an honest living. Now, many people have interpreted that, you know, in many different ways of, oh, don't worry about money, don't talk about money. And in the Sikh religion, there's also this big concept of seva, which means selfless service, giving back. And so there's this kind of like real giving aspect, which is great. And I agree with, but many times we overlook the idea of, how about the earning aspect? How do we earn? How do we take care of ourselves? Because the way I look at it is, if you want to be able to fill somebody else's cup, you want to feed somebody else, you have to be able to feed yourself first. And this is a lesson that my grandfather taught me. My grandparents are immigrants, or they were refugees before they came and lived with me. They were refugees because the state of Punjab used to be much larger. 1947, the state was severed. And if you were a Sikh and you were on the west side of Punjab, you had to migrate east, otherwise you were going to be killed. And it was a very brutal, very rough, very like bad time. And my grandparents were on the west side. And so immediately they had to leave their homes, leave their lands, leave family members, leave their friends behind, and migrate and run east. My grandfather, I heard this story a lot, and he actually just moved back to America. But when he started the migration process, the process moving east, all he had was a sword in his hand and the clothes on his back. Nothing else. Left all the money, left all the land, left everything behind, even left his parents behind, and started running. And during that process, he got attacked by a mob. And he had to defend himself, and he saw his uncle get killed right in front of him. His uncle got a knife, a sword right to his head, cut his head open in half. And that was the last time he saw him. And now he comes over to the new east side of Punjab, the new India. He lost his shoes along the way, doesn't have a home, doesn't have any family, doesn't have any friends. He's here just trying to figure it out himself, and now has to figure out, how do you make life work? And what he tells me from that time is, poorness is the worst disease. And the reason why is because when you're at that level of poverty, that level of poorness, you can't even think about feeding somebody else. You can't think about helping another person, because the only thing on your mind is, how can I feed myself? How can you feed your family? When that's the only thing that you're trying to do, you can't worry about feeding other people. And that's where, you know, for me, it was, I want to become successful so I can give back to my family, to my parents, give back to my community, and be able to do more things. Money at its core is just a tool. It allows you to do more of the things that you want. If you give a good person money, they have a tool to do more good. If you give a bad person more money, they have a tool to do more bad. So money, at the end of the day, it's just like gasoline. It amplifies whoever you are, which is why we need more good people with money. So now going back to your question of why, I really think it's just a lot of insecurity. You know, if we feel like we did everything right, we're working hard, but we don't have what somebody else has, something must be wrong. They must have done something bad. They must have done something that, you know, we didn't see. So we create excuses, we create smoke screens. But the thing that we don't understand is the financial education aspect, because that is the thing that can make or break your finances. It does not matter how much money you make, what degree you have, who your parents are, where you went to school. None of that matters. It's what you do with the money you make. And this is one of those things that it can be very hard for you to understand unless you actually see it. I was actually just reading a study last week. It said that 7 out of 10 Americans across the board are living paycheck to paycheck. And then it said that 50% of Americans, or just about 50% of Americans making 6 figures or more, are also living paycheck to paycheck. The majority of Americans across the board, doesn't matter the income, are broke. They have little to no savings. They have little to no investments, regardless of how much money you're making. And the reason is not just because of what salary or job or what degree you have or who your parents are, but because of what financial education you have. And none of us are taught a thing about money, which is the craziest thing.
Yeah, I really appreciate you going in that direction, because I think everyone thinks that when we do have a conversation about money, because of our conditioning, it has to be this obsession or it has to be this goal. And you're like, well, actually, it's just about education.
Yeah.
It's just about, you have to make this thing and you're going to do something with it.
Right.
We better learn how it goes in and goes out and where it goes.